diversity of the audience, I will keep it fairly light. You will see. So to begin with, we are actually surrounded by porous materials. For example, this bread, this cake, the zeolites that you use, all these are porous material in your house, whatever AquaGuard you have or the Electrophobes, Kent, etc. Those filters are all porous materials through which we pass water and then we clean them or we get clean water. Recently, we have been seeing this effectivity of the porous material, because these days without the mask we cannot do anything absolutely. So, which is also another porous material. To be very honest, if you just take a simple mask, you don't have to go for N95 or null, and put it under a regular microscope in any laboratory, you will see that very nice ordered pores. You can see some of these pictures that I've taken, and I've placed it over here. This top part, of course, copied from internet. But the bottom part is some of the regular masks that we have been using, and you can see how nicely ordered these masks or these pores are. They're not absolutely uniform, but they are fairly ordered. So today I'm going to discuss something, a porous material, which is based on a very simple principle. This is a very beautiful picture by Escher, where you can see endless road and all very excellent pictures of this. So this picture shows that if you take a joint and you connect that joint with another joint, you create a three-dimensional architecture where you have a joint and you are connecting this joint, and you create a nice three-dimensional architecture. And in reality, if you could have done it in the molecular level, you could have used those materials for storing something, capturing something, and of course, probably transporting something. So what exactly we are trying to say here? What we are trying to say is, these days, those who have suffered from this, horrible disease knows that, doctors immediately prescribe you to take some zinc supplement, that is Asca zinc and all. That is nothing but zinc acetate. Zinc acetate. This is zinc acetate. This is zinc acetate. If you take the crystal structure of zinc acetate, these blue polyhedras are zinc, and these rest of the things are acetate or acetic acid molecules. So if you take the zinc acetate, and you could have extended that zinc acetate structure in all three dimensions, this could have been probably the architecture. The architecture is like this. You can see this is a reaction between zinc and zinc nitrate and terephthalic acid. Terephthalic acid is the monomer of the PET bottle that we use in our household, which is a serious problem these days. So if you take this terephthalic acid, react with zinc nitrate, you get these beautiful zinc terephthalate structures, and where you have this zinc cluster, and which is connected to another cluster by this terephthalic acid, which is the linker. So once again, imagine that first example that I showed you, the joint connected to another joint via some kind of organic strut, and you create this three-dimensional beautiful structure, which we call metal organic framework, or MOF. So metal organic framework. Why? It is constituted of metal. It is organic in nature. There is also organic counterpart, and together they create a framework like this. So metal organic framework, very simple nomenclature. They are called MOFs. These MOFs, and these are the porous materials. One of the porous materials that I am about to talk today is that these materials, what are they good for? They are, one of the reasons they are good for is storing hydrogen, and of course CO2 and other things which I have to skip today, but hydrogen is a very important aspect of life. Hydrogen storage. Recently, the Department of Science and Technology has launched a huge program of hydrogen technology, which is there in the DST website. You can see where onboard hydrogen storage, so hydrogen storage on the power plant using the hydrogen for a fuel in syngas and so on. And these materials, because of their porous nature, and those who are not from these fields, I can say that if you have a zero pressure, and if you just take these dots as uptake, you can see in the zero pressure, the uptake is so sharp, and it is taking a lot of nitrogen molecules. This is based on, of course, nitrogen, but we are talking about these materials and their efficacy towards hydrogen storage. Now, I will tell you the problem here, and it's a huge problem, and I frankly speaking, believe that only chemists cannot solve this problem. Physicists, engineers, material scientists and other people has to come together to sort this problem out. It cannot be done by one group of people. It needs a huge team of people. Why? Because hydrogen is the lightest element in the periodic table. So in order to compress hydrogen, if you have to put a hydrogen into a tanker or inside your car, you cannot just attach a hydrogen balloon or something next to your car. That is meaningless and stupid. So you have to compress it within the system. And you cannot compress, it is very difficult to compress the lightest element in the periodic table. All right, you can counter argue that, okay, I am going to absorb it into the, like you have right now showed in your previous slide. I'm going to absorb it like this. Yes, you can absorb, but remember, hydrogen is one proton, one electron, and its polarization ability is very low. So it is very, very difficult to polarize. So you can imagine how difficult this is for a simple thing, or a simple molecule, how difficult the problem is. So keeping that in perspective, a lot of people around the world has been trying to store hydrogen in many different systems. Metal hydrides, carbon nanotubes, other non-carbonaceous nanotubes, and of course this material called metal organic framework. Why we should work on this metal organic framework? I'm sure many of you are already thinking along the line. I mean, this person is saying all kinds of stuff. I mean, what is so big deal about it? After all, there are some routine porous material, maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, of whatever is commercially available, zeolite, silica, and carbon. Zeolite, silica, and carbon are beautiful material, absolutely state-of-the-art and amazing systems. But they have a limitation that you cannot make them very highly porous. Whereas in the metal organic framework, you have the opportunity, because you can make the material of your choice, you can push it, push the boundary of the porosity, subsequently the storage capability of these materials. On that note, so what DOE, Department of Energy, has said as target, where they have said that if we take, let's say, if we put 100 gram of solid material into a tank, and you can use about 100 bar pressure, if you can store 6 gram of hydrogen, which is not exactly 6 to 8%, 6 gram of hydrogen, we will be very happy. But keep it in mind that your storing capacity must work at minus 30 degree to 50 degrees centigrade. That is where these materials fall short. Otherwise, all these things metal organic frameworks can take care, and that is where these materials fall short. Because these materials can store hydrogen only at 77 Kelvin, not at room temperature. So since then, since 2005, people are all over the world, people are working on developing materials where you can do a room temperature hydrogen storage. If I would have got a little bit more time, I would have discussed a little bit more on this note, but I'm for the youngsters, if someone is working on it or thinking of a research problem, think about this problem of storing hydrogen at room temperature. Now, coming back, the last part of my talk, what I'm going to say today is that if you think about the industrial perspective, if any materials you want to present to them, first thing they will ask, first of all, they are inexpensive or not. Can we make it in kilogram scale? First thing first. Then, of course, we are talking about the porous material, so it has to be porous. And third and most important thing is that they have to be stable. They cannot be, disintegrated or gone bad and become very poor quality after a few runs. Then it is meaningless. So these things are very important parameters, and of course you should be able to make it quickly. So these factors, why is that? I'll tell you simple. I'll show you a couple of pictures, and you will get an idea. I visited Tata Steel few years ago, and where they have a very simple problem is that these pipes they are carrying water to the furnace to keep it cool. Their blast furnace needs to keep at a certain temperature. Otherwise, the furnace will melt by its own temperature. So this water is going, and this water through which you can look at it. Look at this size, and if you are trying to compare with respect to scale, I would like to ask you to look at the car, this truck. So water is going, and in this water you have chloride and cyanide. This is a big problem for them, and they have asked us, and they are using this coal, this commercial coal that they generate. That coal to purify these chloride and cyanide, and they are having a lot of difficulty. Once again, look at the research problem. Looks so simple, but how complex, and they spend billions of rupees on these problems, because each time they sustain this problem or get into this problem, they have to stop the production. And these are the tanks where they store it. They purify it and they pump it. Otherwise, these chloride and cyanide will corrode the entire system. Now, coming back to it, and here is the another problem of MOF materials, because the MOF materials or metal organic frameworks, being their metal and organic linker counterpart, they are unstable in water. They're absolutely, most of them are absolutely unstable material. They are beautiful, absolutely beautiful material, and a lot of research is going on, but they are unstable in water. And that is the reason, once again, another group of scientists and along with also us, we have thought about to work on another type of material called covalent organic framework, which is made by completely organic linkers. What is that? So we take this simple amine C2 symmetric system, we take an aldehyde, we react it together, and together we create this kind of hexagonal structure. Look at this, a simple C3C2 combination will give this hexagonal structure. This hexagonal structure, like exactly like graphene, they should stack on top of each other, should form graphite. And if they do so, they will create these pores. That's what we expected them to do. Once they form these pores, they will precipitate, and eventually you will get this crystalline powdered material at your disposal. So these materials are completely covalent in nature. They are organic also, so covalent organic, and they form the framework, so covalent organic. Very simple. Since then, a lot of people started working on it. Why? Because first of all, you can think about these materials in the laboratory, or you can think about these materials in the computer, and then you can go to the laboratory, and with the knowledge you can make whatever material you want, whatever kind of grid that you are looking for, you can make it. And if you can make those materials, you can just type in Google covalent organic framework, and you will see. You can use it for membrane, photoconducting material, heterogeneous catalysis, you name it. You just name it. So there, people have started working on it, and obviously, we also, and we figured out there is a serious problem of these materials. We wanted them to form like this. They are not school children; they are molecules. So as soon as we start mixing them together, we eventually get quickly these kind of completely haphazard amorphous junk material. These are supposed to be beautifully crystalline and porous material, and instead you get this. So, but that is not going to work, right? So, we need to make this, and that too also very quickly, and we are always getting this done. So, how exactly we solved it, and that is what I'm going to discuss in about next 2 to 3 minutes and finish it off. So how we solved that problem? The way we did it is very simple. We thought that instead of a direct reaction between an amine and aldehyde, why don't we first convert that amine into a salt? We mixed amine, which is a basic system, and reacted with an acid, which is of course the acid, and acid and base formed a salt. That salt, when we charged and started doing the reaction with aldehyde, that time the aldehyde need to free the bond, the protonation. So right now this is protonated system, so it needs to break the NH plus system and make it an amine as a free amine. And that gave us a tiny bit of delay and pushed the thermodynamics of this reaction in a more sort of a regulatory manner, so that we can react this aldehyde and the amine and eventually form these very beautiful crystalline structures without skipping that amorphous counterpart by itself. In reality, we did it in a very simple manner. We took the acid, para-toluene sulfonic acid, commercially available, 500 rupees per kilo, maybe half a kilo. So, and we reacted with this diamine, a little bit expensive, about 1,000 rupees, half a kilo or 250 grams. So we reacted this, and we get a paste material. We add this aldehyde, and after reacting this aldehyde and this amine, what we found out is that in this case, this particular aldehyde and amine reacts together, forms this dough, and then if you heat this up, you will get these nice crystalline structure for your disposal. These materials are extremely porous. I mean, we could get a porosity of 3,000 meters squared per gram, and that was absolutely wonderful. You will ask the question, why did you choose para-toluene sulfonic acid? We actually tried a bunch of other acids, and we found out that when you are reacting the acid with the amine forms a amine and acid salt, something like this. So this is the amine. You can see there are 3 hydrogens on nitrogen, so it is ammonium salt. Now, what we found out is that if you use a very strong acid, this bond is very strong, then aldehyde cannot react. If you use a very weak acid, this bond is very weak, so then aldehyde cannot react either. So then, in this case, both the cases, we could made a bunch of covalent organic frameworks and figured out that your optimum hydrogen bond length of the salt should be a particular propensity or particular region, so that you can get these materials in bulk. We used it very simply and used it in extruder and put it inside the extruder, and it was very easy to synthesize. It is the extruder to make the polymers. So we made the extruder, used the extruder and made this in bulk quantity. That is happening with Gas Authority of India Limited at NCL. And you can see these images shows these chips of covalent organic frameworks, how stable they are in HCl, sodium bicarbonate, and so on and so forth. And these data represents they are very porous as well. To finish this, this presentation, and once again thanking Professor Wagmere and other organizers for this. So this we have summarized in this particular paper. So you are welcome to take a look at it. And apart from these materials are good for many other things. That was the title of my presentation. So you are welcome to take a look at it. You are welcome to discuss or think about these materials perspective. And I believe many of you will be interested in these kind of materials, and I am always open for collaboration as well. These are my students, funding agencies are deeply acknowledged, collaborators are even more acknowledged, and of course, needless to say, without my students' help and support, it would have been absolutely impossible. Once again, thank you, Professor Wagmere, for this opportunity. Thank you all for your patience. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Banerjee, for a very nice talk and on this very exciting class of materials. So participants can type in their questions in the chat box or question and answer on the right-hand side of the window. But I'll also check on the YouTube. There is a question, Rahul, from Professor Bhaskaran. MOFs are electrically insulating. Are there special efforts to create electrically conducting MOFs?
Yes, there are. Actually, in fact, there was a decent discussion on this to make electrically conducting covalent organic frameworks for thin films application. Both MOF and COF, there is this problem is that the delocalization of pi electron especially is compromised because of this bonding. So that part has been, people are working on it to make, I would say, in a frame of covalent organic frameworks or few other two-dimensional MOF materials to enhance the electrical conductivity. However, they are not comparable towards the graphene or muxene, at least towards this stage. If you ask me, then I would say that the opportunities could be for the hybrid materials, where you hybrid this thing, use the porosity of the MOF and conductivity of these materials like muxene and graphene to create a better quality material for purpose. I think Professor Radhakrishnan has asked a question, so I'll read the question and try to answer. So the MOFs could be dynamic structures thanks to the metal ligand coordination. Do you lose this in COFs due to the covalent bonding? Yes, to some extent, yes. We lose the dynamicity in covalent organic frameworks because they are rigid structures, not flexible, at least in few cases like MOF materials. But few COFs you can make which are flexible, but not like MOF materials. Few MOFs you can make, they are flexible in nature. COFs in general you lose the flexibility. That's a problem. That's an issue.
Well, there is another question. Why hydrogen storage is typically possible at 77 Kelvin, and if so, what can be done to bring it back to room temperature?
Yes, to increase the interaction between the hydrogen and the surface itself. So that is a lot of research. I think Professor Wagmere has also done a lot of research on that. So the polarization, hydrogen is very difficult to polarize. So it's H and H, and so difficult. So as methane. So now, if you have to create a polarization, you have to keep it in mind the isosteric heat. That should not be too hard that you cannot take the molecule back and as and when you need. And that should not be too loose that, as soon as the temperature is gone, temperature is ramped up, it's gone. So this is a very, very tricky problem. The isostatic heat, that is called the isostatic heat, the heat with which it will generate. It cannot be too strong, as I said. If it's too strong, it will generate too much heat. Then your tank will also, have a lot of problems. So these are the problems. So as you can see, you solve one problem, you generate another kind of stuff. So that is a big challenge in hydrogen storage, I must acknowledge, and that probably needs to be solved.
All right. Please join me in thanking Professor Banerjee once again for a very interesting and accessible talk on this exciting topic. Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you, Professor Banerjee.